Hey guys, it's Danny. Today I'm gonna do a subject that one of you guys requested, and this is, I'm gonna tell you how I go about IDing my no-ID orchids. Now, I'll give it, this is not the first time I talk about it, but my latest video on this topic is around 8 or 9 years old at the moment, and yes, I will give it, it kind of sucks. I was very awkward on camera and the quality is not so good, so I think it's time to redo it. The process didn't change all that much, but I do have a few more tips that I acquired along the way. So I hope this will help you out, and before we start, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it, and why not subscribe? I post multiple times a week and it is completely free. But if you're feeling a little extra, and you can, do consider further supporting the channel by becoming a member, checking out the affiliate links down below, checking out the merch, or using the super thanks option below my videos. Right, let's start first and foremost with a question. By the way, you'll have chapters down below. If you want to skip any of these sections, you can do so. So I want to address something that came up at the time as well. Is it okay for us to ID our orchids because the degree of mis-IDing an orchid is high, particularly if we are at the beginning and we're not really acquainted with all of the details we need to look at? There are many orchids that look very similar in between them. To some degree, it's not really okay for us to ID them. If they don't have a tag, they're a no ID. And this is especially important if you want to enter your orchid in a competition or in a contest. And let's say you have a beautiful individual, you win, then people would like to buy your orchids or keikis or divisions of your orchid, and you're gonna sell it and give it away with that particular name, but it's mislabeled. You're gonna create like this whole confusion in the market regarding a particular hybrid. So from that regard, yeah, it's not a great idea for us to try and ID them. However, at the same time, I do believe that it is important to know what orchids we have, just so we know how to take care of them. And while it's absolutely fine for us to have a no ID orchid, me as a creator, I kind of struggle a bit with no ID orchids because everybody keeps asking me where I purchased them from, and many of you expect me to say a place in the USA because half of you are from the USA and I don't live in the USA. So I'm gonna say a place that it's on the other side of Earth and it's not gonna help you. How will you acquire the same orchid you see in this video? Unless you can search for a name, right? So the topic is a little bit sensitive, I will give it that. Hence why I would advise everybody to ID their orchids with a grain of salt. And when you ID them, you know, maybe refer to them as no ID and then the name you think they are. And maybe refrain from entering them in competitions unless the competitions have a no ID section. Also, maybe refrain from selling them as something you're not sure of. Keep that name, you know, just for your own research. In my world, we don't have orchid competitions, we don't have orchid shops or nurseries or orchid associations. We have nothing, and probably we will never have anything because it's such a tiny country. So in my region, it really doesn't matter all that much, but for those of you who live in very, let's say, orchid active countries and you have conventions and all of that fun stuff, yeah, try to be mindful and remember a no ID orchid will forever be a no ID, and keep that tag with the ID you might find on the internet just for you to know what orchid it is when it's not in bloom. And I don't know about anybody else, but for me, it's very important for you guys to have the same things that I do. I don't like to have something that nobody can get. I like to do tutorials and stuff on things people can actually get and talk about them in the comment section and say, hey, it bloomed finally and it smells great. Like you said, you know, I get a joy out of that. I don't get joy out of showing you something that is very exclusive. So that's why I ID my orchids. And yeah, let's get on with how I ID my orchids because it's becoming very boring, isn't it? Right, first and foremost, the first method is for very, very, very early beginners. You see a plant on a discount and it's just orchid. That's what it says on the tag, which happens a lot in my area. Just says orchid, but you have no idea what type of orchid. You've probably never seen an orchid like that before. How do you know what it is? Well, I do have a sort of a guide that will not tell you the full cultivar, hybrid name, and so on. They will just tell you if what you have is a Phalaenopsis or a Cattleya or an Oncidium or a Dendrobium or what have you, which is still very, very important because Each of these species has their own quirks, so it's very good for you to know what you have. You see something with a bulb, oh my goodness, what the heck, is this even an orchid? Because orchids look like this. That might actually be an oncidium. So if you are at that very, very early stage, please refer to the description. I will link you to that video, and I'm sure it will help you with the most popular orchids that you will find in flower shops. Method number 2, this is a little bit more advanced for growers who already kind of know what species we have on the market, trying to determine what hybrid or cultivar we have. So we know that we have a Cattleya. We recognize it's a Cattleya. Okay, what? Cattleya. Well, the best way to ID an orchid is when it's in bloom. And luckily for us, most of the orchids at the flower shop are sold in bloom. By the foliage alone, it's almost impossible to ID anything, even though, yes, particular hybrids or cultivars have differences when it comes to foliage. Some of them are bifoliates or unifoliates in the case of Cattleyas. When it comes to the exact ID, it's impossible to tell because there are thousands, if not more, maybe tens of thousands of hybrids at this point. They might not all be in circulation at once, but there are a whole lot of them, so you cannot tell. But when it's in bloom, this is when we can tell. So what I do is I Google a lot, and for many, many days. And I start by the name of the species. I have a Cattleya, for example. I will start by typing Cattleya. This is rule number 1, knowing what species it is. Sometimes it can get a little tricky because it might be a Laleocattleya or Brassicatleya and so on. Nowadays, they're kind of old Cattleyas, but on the internet, you will find the older names as well. That's not important. We can type Cattleya or Cattleya type. So we're starting with the species. Then we're gonna go and type in keywords that describe the flower. Let's say I have a yellow Cattleya. Let's say this is a Cattleya, right? So Cattleya, yellow flower, because my flower is mainly yellow, and then I'm gonna try to go into even more detail. If the lip is pink, I'm gonna type pink lip. So Cattleya, yellow flower, pink lip. If that's all that I got on that Cattleya, that's what I'm gonna type. If, however, I have other details like fragrant or dots on the petals or something like that, I'm gonna type it in. I'm gonna make a string of keywords there, and I'm gonna type it all in, and then I'm gonna see what the internet shows up. Sometimes it returns the correct hybrid that I'm searching for, but sometimes it turns up hundreds of them. So I then have to go through pictures and see each one individually, sometimes just look at the details and see if any of them come close to my orchid. Many of the times I will find the orchid that I'm looking for. Depending on the coloration and the pattern, you will not have many pink Cattleyas with purple veins. There aren't many veiny Cattleyas to begin with, but if you're looking for yellow Cattleya, red lip, oh my goodness, it's gonna take you a little bit to find the correct one because there are so many hybrids. And sometimes you will not find a picture that looks like your Cattleya. So we're gonna put that particular Cattleya on standby. So first and foremost, this is kind of how I do it. I just go on Google and type the description of my flower or of my orchid. If there are some distinctive things like, I don't know, mottled leaves or something. There aren't any Cattleyas with mottled leaves. I was thinking of Phalaenopsis now. But all of these distinctive things that I can describe, I will go ahead and describe to Google, and Google will show me what it has in stock. So that sometimes works even after days of Googling, and sometimes I see a picture that looks almost like my orchid, but not really. I click on that picture and Google gives you a few other pictures more like this, I think it's called. Then I go to those pictures and it's like I go down the rabbit hole with yellow Cattleya, red lip, and after a few weeks, sometimes I get it. But what if I don't? Well, here's another tip. I like to go on nurseries, even if they're not in my area, just nurseries online on the internet, and see what they have in stock. Let's say in the section Cattleya, because that's what I'm interested in, right? So I look at the section and see if I can find any yellow Cattleyas. Then I move on to a different nursery, and so on and so forth. This sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. There are certain nurseries which are more prone to having flower shop stuff, like Secret Garden. That nursery typically has flower shop orchids, and particularly Phalaenopsis, which in my opinion are the hardest to ID. Cattleyas are kind of hard, Phalaenopsis are even harder because there are many of them. So that nursery I know has a lot of flower shop stuff, but they have them with names. So even if I'm not looking for something in particular, I still go and check out and I will see an orchid that looks like one of mine that I didn't ID yet, and then I might actually find the ID. This is how I know that this particular Phalaenopsis might be an Allura hybrid. Not entirely sure which one, but I have a tag which, oh, there it is. I have a tag that now says Phalaenopsis, no, not this tag. I have a second tag. Yeah, when I don't have an ID, my tags are like this, Phalaenopsis no ID yellow. But I have a second tag now that says Phalaenopsis Allura hybrid, so that when this orchid doesn't have flowers anymore, I know what it is. But which Allura hybrid, I don't know. It might not be an Allura hybrid, but it just helps me keep track of stuff. It checks the boxes though, it is a novelty. Anyway, so even if you don't ID something right away, you can actually find an ID at a later date. I like to look through nursery listings. Sometimes you will find what you have, even if it might take months. So those are the two, let's say, basic tools that I have to ID my orchid. I know people like to use Google Lens and stuff. Google Lens doesn't know. I mean, I take a picture of this orchid and it shows me, I don't know, a yellow tree in bloom. It doesn't get it right. If you show it a picture of a tomato, it will tell you, yes, this is a tomato, you know? It works with very, very popular stuff. But if I want to ID an orchid that is so obscure, not even Google knows what it is, you know, it's not gonna work out. So at this point, I'm still relying on myself, and you know, maybe one day AI will become so evolved that it will just take a little look-see and it will immediately find it. So counting on you, ChatGPT. Now from here, we can go and experiment a little more with what we find, because the whole point of knowing an ID for us as non-YouTube people, right, is to learn more about the orchid we have, because we're curious people. So with the name that we have now found, we can go to Orchid Roots and check the parentage of our orchid and the heritage. I'm sorry, there's a fly in this room. It's been in here all day. I cannot get it out. And it's attracted to the lights that I have, and it's round. It's making an appearance on camera. It's gonna be famous now. Right, so we can go and check the parentage and the heritage. That fly. And you know, tickle our curiosity when it comes to the hybrid that we have. I don't know if everybody's curious about it. I am. Let me know in a comment. Are you guys curious to know what the parents are? I always find it fascinating to see how the parents look like versus how the hybrid turns out. Sometimes you can clearly see features from one parent combined with the other, and I find that fascinating. So I'll link you down below in the description to that website. You can put in any name of any orchid, even species. Obviously they will not have parentage or anything, but the website will tell you if it's a species at least. So in the end, that's pretty much how I go about IDing my orchids. There is no known registry of like having a registry with pictures and all of that. I think there was the Orchid Whiz, but last time I checked, quite a few years ago, it was very expensive. It was like $300, $400 or something like that. It's okay. I'm not gonna spend that much money on it. Plus, I'm not entirely sure if it has like pictures and parents and all of that. If I don't have pictures, I'm lost in IDing my orchid, you know? And if I do have an ID, I might be interested in the parentage, but I have Orchid Roots, which is free. So you might want to check it out. I haven't looked at it for a lot of time, but there is that tool. Other than that, there is no website where you can like upload a picture and it will tell you it's this orchid, or you have a database of 10,000 hybrids and you can browse through the pictures until you find your orchid. Not that I know of anyway, so at the time that I'm recording this, there is no such website. If it appears in the future, great. Alrighty, so I hope this helps you out. That's how I do things, and many of the times I don't ID my orchids and I just put them on standby, and out of the blue, at some point, I just see this picture on Instagram or a nursery website and I remember I have that orchid, so I make a tag for it. And yeah, that is about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this is useful. Thank you for requesting this video. If you have other requests for videos, let me know down below. And with that said, I hope you'll have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye.